You have the draft February 5, 2024 minutes in your packet. Is there a motion to approve? Second. Betty, thanks. Any corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Now the reaffirmation of HR policies, cancer screening leave policy. They're in your miscellaneous section of the packet.
Very, very quickly, some of you have heard me say this numerous times. Under the Public Authorities Reform Act, there's a bunch of policies we're supposed to pass and reaffirm every single year and adjust as required. These three were reviewed by our Personnel Director, Sandra Dare, who's sitting over at the staff table here. None of these have changed. They're exactly the same as what we passed prior. But if you have any specific questions on anything that might be in it, Sandra, I'm sure can answer your questions.
Any questions regarding these? We'll do one motion to cover all three.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Betty. A second. Thanks, Gene. Any further comments, questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Pat?
Okay, I have a couple items and then some others that we'll reserve for executive session. First and foremost, I'll just let you know the good news is the reservoir is pretty full. It's only 4.5 feet from the top of the dam. The bad news is there's not a lot of snow up there. You know, and the goal is to have it full and spilling on May 1st. And unless we get more rain, that's probably not going to happen this year. It might be the first time in 100 years we haven't started the navigation season with a full reservoir, but we'll see.
Is that a requirement imposed on the?
No, it's just a practice. It's just a best practice.
Okay.
They like to start with a full reservoir. Every time it fills up, they've been draining it down in a hurry because they've been trying to provide compensating flows to Brookfield, which I'll get into in executive session.
Yeah. Okay.
Different topic. But right now it's in pretty good shape. It's 20 feet above normal, but it might not last that long, and we'll see how it
I
goes.
noticed that when I was driving by, coming here over Dyke Road,
Yeah.
the canal is quite down.
Yeah, they haven't started filling it yet.
Okay.
They drain it in the winter so the ice doesn't damage and scour the banks on the sides. Then they fill it during the month of April and get ready for navigation season.
Thank you.
When they start filling it, then they'll be really running it down. So as I said, the good news is it's 20 feet above normal, but the bad news is the reason why it's above normal is because most of the time it hasn't had the inflow that it's had all winter. It's been up there in a snowpack, and then as it melts, it refills in the spring. We'll see how it goes. At any rate, the other thing I wanted to mention, we just touched on a little bit earlier, was this whole business with this Millennia Corporation. The people that we were dealing with were in Cincinnati. Cleveland. 6 buildings they own here. 2 of them were way behind. One, frankly, we couldn't shut off because it had a combined fire and domestic service. So we can't turn the service off. They'd have no fire protection. Nevertheless, they and Miligrano, our customer service manager, who couldn't be here tonight, spent a lot of time with them over the phone. Actually sat with them over the phone, watched each of the payments drop in as they went account by account. They all got paid up in full. You know, the media was great. They really focused a lot of attention on this thing. One of the news clippings I had seen was from December of 23, just a few months ago, saying that this company was this close to losing their HUD certification. A lot of the properties they deal with, the rents are subsidized by HUD, and should they lose their federal contracts, that would, you know, really kill their cash flow. And I suspect that's what happened because while I was away at a conference last week, the news broke that all 6 buildings were being put up for sale immediately. So I would think that that's probably the problem. I didn't see the report, but one of the things I was told was that the owners of the Kennedy Plaza Apartments want to buy one of those buildings. I think it was the Buck Apartments that were at the crux of the whole thing to start with. The other thing, and the reason why I bring this up is because some discussion I've had with Chairman D'Elia. What I would like to propose is a larger working group involving county, city codes, county social services, to have not only a communication strategy for early warnings that we can all start talking and prepare for these things earlier, but also try to strategize on how maybe we can get some of these properties into local hands, people that are going to be caring about the community, as you said, Bruce. And then it was nice to see I spent a half an hour on the phone with Marianne Buttenshawn, and then it was literally like 5 hours later they put that press release out saying they were coming up with that. So she was fully up to speed, and they came up with their own solution, which I think is great. The only minor concern I have about it is that The same as the deposits that have been talked about many years ago. You know, we had people saying, we should hold deposits from tenants. Okay, when do we grab it? When do we apply it to the account? What happens after it's gone? How do you get it replenished? So it'd be nice to put the money in escrow, but it's the same thing. If they fall behind, when do we pull it out of escrow and pay the bill? Does it cover all the bill? If not, what about the rest? And then once it's gone, you know, if they're not paying the water bill, they're not going to replenish the escrow. Now, it's certainly a good measure, and it would mean that it'll weed out rather the serious people from the ones that are not playing by the rules. So I still applaud it, but I don't think it's a panacea. So once we get this working group together, and the chairman wanted to be included in that, I think we'll have a good discussion, and we'll all be better off for it. So a couple other quick items. One of the things we had talked about, I didn't know whether to put this under old business or just bring it up now, either way. We had discussed the problem we have with a handful of accounts that have large commercial meters. We need to change those meters, but in order for that to happen, they have to hire a private plumber to get in, rework the plumbing. Typically with a larger meter like that anyway, we supply the meter for free, we give it to their plumber. Their plumber would set that meter so our guys aren't tinkering with their plumbing, especially if there's a broken valve ahead of it, or if the lay length of the meter is a little different than what's in there now. They have to alter the plumbing to accommodate that. We don't do that kind of work anyway. But some of these larger accounts were balking at that and basically just telling us to go take a hike. And in some cases, it's been several years. In one particular case I was discussing this morning with staff, the meter that's in there now was installed in 1995. It's coming on 30 years. And so what we talked about last month was perhaps implementing a new fee so that if they're out of compliance and they've gotten a sequence of letters and they're still refusing to commit to hiring a plumber and changing that meter out, we would associate a fee with that. Procedurally, we can't change the rate schedule until there's a public hearing. We have to have a public hearing anytime we want to change those fees. So the purpose for the handout that's in front of you now is to see what you think about this proposed schedule. We can obviously alter it if the group wants to do that. But whatever we agree on tonight, the next step would be that we would arrange and advertise properly for a public hearing, open the hearing, hear anybody that wants to talk, close the hearing, and then at that point, at the next meeting, you then have a legal pathway to vote and amend the rate schedule with the hearing being completed. You'll notice the price goes up as the meter size goes up. The reason for that is because it's twofold, actually. One, with a larger meter, if it's declining in accuracy as it gets older, we lose more revenue off of it. As meters age, they allow water to slip through undetected as they wear out. And so the larger the meter, the more revenue we're at risk of losing as it ages. Secondly, the larger the meter, the more costly it's going to be for them to hire a plumber. So if you don't have a graduated increase in fees and only have that smaller fee, if they're doing the math, they're going to say, well, over the next 3 years, it's only going to cost me $1,200 as opposed to hiring a plumber for $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000. So in order for this to be an inducement, it has to be somewhat reflective of the cost, so that as they weigh it out, they're going to say, all right, well, I can pay this for the next year, or I can hire a plumber and cut my losses. So that's the whole idea behind it. I can tell you right now, there's probably less than 10 commercial accounts that fall into this category. So it's not something that is going to be widespread and punitive across the user base, in my opinion. It's just a few chronic people that have just refused to cooperate with us. And so that was the idea, and we discussed it, as I mentioned at the last meeting. So if the board wants to entertain this mechanism, the next step would be is to have a hearing with this proposed rate schedule or any way the board wishes to amend it. And then you could vote after the hearing's conducted.
Sounds reasonable.
Yes, I just got one question.
Sure.
How do you get the meters read, the old ones?
Well, in most cases, it's an electronic register that sits on top of the meter, and it has a wire that is either wired to an outside touchpad.
So you
or
don't
it's-
go?
We don't. In a lot of these cases, they're in pits, and sometimes the pits are flooded. You can't even get down there. So that's another reason why they balk, because they got to pump the pit out in order for the plumber to get down there. Or it could be in a vault, and it's a confined space, and it makes it even more complicated. So in most of these cases, there's a wire from that meter that goes out to either a
outside.
touchpad or a radio modem that transmits a signal to us.
So that's how you're reading these old meters at this time?
Right.
These commercial meters?
Right.
Almost every meter.
Yeah.
being read that way.
That's how you're doing every meter. So there's not one meter that you manually go out there and read.
Jim would know that better. There's probably a few. Are we still reading manually a couple meters, right? Because we haven't even been able to wire it out for a modem yet. Right. In some cases, it's in a pit, and there's a lid on the pit, but it's in the middle of a parking lot.
Do you charge them for going out there and manually read the meters?
We haven't yet. That's something that we probably need to talk about doing. But there's a handful of those, and because they bring in enough revenue, they're larger accounts. You know, we just kind of have been eating that cost a little bit. And in a lot of cases, it's not their own fault that we can't do that. It's because of the location. There might not be in the middle of a parking lot the ability to, you know, put a post with a or a radio modem on it or a touchpad. And they're supposed to have a modem that you can mount under the lid on the top of the manhole where the meter might be, and it would transmit out. But we found those don't really work the way they're supposed to.
But the bottom line is, the meters are, put a measure of fairness into the collection of information. Everybody, with working meters, everybody has the same fair chance of being measured appropriately.
Right.
These meters that are unable to be measured appropriately are unfair to the whole system.
Right.
Well, the impeller wears out after a while, right?
Yeah.
Spins the secondary, and once that wears out, you're getting a different read of the water flow.
Right.
So less fins you got.
And as they age, they err on the side of the user, not on our
course.
side. They don't register more water; they register less water as the parts get worn out and the gaps get a little bit bigger inside there.
So you want to find them every month with this charge?
So this would be a fee that would just be an inducement for them to finally go out there. And again,
And do it.
this would only apply to people after they've gotten a series of letters saying your meter's overdue. This is what you need to do. We'll provide the meter. You got to hire a plumber. And some of these companies have been ignoring us for years. They just haven't complied with it. So this is designed to really only be applied to those people that refuse to cooperate with us. If they're cooperating, we don't put any fee on their account.
Just so I know, I know from what Frank just said, I just want to clarify, this isn't per month, you're doing this per billing cycle as you.
Well,
4 months,
yeah.
3 months?
So
That's what I'm saying is.
well,
that's-
for example, for 5/8 and some of the 1 inch, those are quarterly customers. The larger meters are monthly customers.
They're monthly customers.
So again, you know, if it's a 6 inch or an 8 inch meter, we could be losing a lot of revenue. Hopefully, the idea is they're going to say, all right, well, if I have to pay $1,000 a month for 6 months, it's cheaper to just hire
Yeah,
a
I just
plumber.
wanted to clarify that,
Right.
we're making sure that it was monthly across the board,
It is
just the way that this states.
Except for the smaller ones on top. Yeah.
Yeah, just this part's the bill.
So hopefully they'll do the math and they'll say,
Yeah.
you know, in 6 months I'm going to waste $6,000 on this fee.
Yeah.
I might as well just hire a plumber and get it over
Get
with.
it over with, yeah.
That's the whole idea of it.
Pat, I have no issue with these numbers, but I wish we saw the procedure because I don't know how this works. So.
I'm sorry,
you know,
procedure.
How many days do they have?
Oh, Jim, you can probably explain that, but
3 letters, and it's about 110 days from the first letter to the next post on.
right.
And how do you know the size of the pipe going into the meter?
Well, in most cases, it's either going to be larger or equal to the meter
You
size.
have to go
But,
inspect it, don't you?
but that's why they have to get a plumber because
But
if
how do you know what to charge them?
well, the reason why we're telling them they have to get a plumber is because the meter either didn't fit or their plumbing is defective. In a lot of cases, we just go change the meter for them as long as we've inspected it, the plumbing's fine, the length of the meter matches up, and everything could be done easily. We can change those meters, and we.
So you already inspected these meters?
Yeah,
You
these
know
are
they're-
customers that have been
you know
told
they're
there's a
2
problem with your
inches, you know
plumbing.
they're 4 inches.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Either, you know, the meter doesn't fit properly because it's too old, a newer one's a different length, or there's a problem with their plumbing. And,
So the notification procedure remains the same.
yes,
We're now gonna.
they get a letter saying we need to change the meter, we need to get in.
fees In.
Right.
Which we've never had before.
Correct. And it's
Has to
only
be
for
on the bill?
non-compliance.
I got you.
That would be on their.
Certified
Pursuant to
letter,
what
bill?
Jim just said.
It's a letter that goes out. We haven't sent it certified, but
I would
in this
say
case, we probably should.
I was just saying.
And they'll get a final letter saying we're gonna be implementing this fee as of this date, so now's your
Yeah,
chance.
you would get how much, like 30 days notice, 60
Yeah.
days notice prior to that?
And if they come in and they go, I've hired this plumber, here's the plan, and they commit to it, then we wouldn't charge them.
Then you would charge them.
Our goal is to get the meter changed out.
Yeah, you're not looking for the extra income, you're just looking for the meter to get changed.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that's going to be the long-term benefit.
Anyone care to move it or not?
I am very pleased to move this. Because it's
Second, Rich.
not 180 days, it's years on some of these.
Yeah, this is a new for some of these, yeah.
You have to do 3 legal notices in the paper that you're doing this, or how are you gonna do this?
So the way it works is that if we're going to hold a public rate hearing, we have to have an advertisement placed in our paper of record.
Okay.
And at least 10 days ahead of the hearing, no more than 20 days ahead of the hearing. So we advertise it with the proper date, and then we conduct the hearing. And you know, if someone shows up, we listen to them, we speak, we write down their notes, we convey that to the board. If nobody comes, then I just open the hearing and close the hearing, and that's the end of it. But it meets the legal requirement.
I second the motion.
Yeah, but Rich already did. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Other item real quickly before we'll move on. As you've probably heard more than you ever care to hear about, lead services. By this October, we have to hand in what's called a lead service inventory, which is supposed to be our best effort at trying to capture how many lead service pipes we have in our system and where they are. Very, very expensive to do. We're tentatively waiting on some money that the state says is coming our way to cover the cost of just the inventory. But as I've mentioned earlier, we also bought a vacuum truck, and we've had a crew periodically going out and investigating. They go right over that curb stop in the middle, at the curb there, and they can suck out a hole 36 inches wide. The reg says you got to see the pipe 18 inches in both directions to verify our side to the main and their side to the house. But with an estimated 3,000 lead services or so that we think we have out there, and then another 8 to 10,000 of what's called unknowns because our records aren't good or it could be galvanized. There's not going to be nearly enough time or crew time to go out and investigate every single one of those things. What the health department will accept in lieu of that is sampling, where we'll do a percentage of ones and then extrapolate from there, but also verification by the homeowner with a digital photo that they can email to us. So to speed things up and to also make our case with the health department that we're doing everything that's within our power and tools available to us to do this investigation properly. What we talked about at the staff level was perhaps proposing something that we've already done before with lead sampling, because they changed our sampling protocol. We actually issued a credit for people that are interested in doing that. So what we would like to suggest, at least for your consideration, is that if we offered a $25 credit to people whose records show that they might be a lead service, all they would need to do to get the credit is to go down the basement, and we would supply instructions on how there's a scratch test you can do if you're not sure what it is or if it's copper. Just take the picture, email it to us, because we have to have that on file by health department records. But the cost of $25 to verify one location is pennies compared to what it would take for us to have to go out there with that crew and actually suck that hole out of the
How are you
ground.
gonna do that? The pipe's got lead on it with the joints welded soldered. They might scratch that too. So how are you gonna do that?
There's a pretty good procedure to identify the pipe coming out of the wall and coming up to the meter.
So they're going to think that you're hoping that they do it right.
Well, they'll have to take a picture, and then we can determine from the picture if it looks like it's lead or it's not lead.
Okay.
You know, if you take a coin and just scratch it, if it gets real shiny, then you know it's lead.
Do you have know of any other system that's done this?
Yeah, even in Rochester they're doing it. I was away last week. I had a nice chat with the director of Onondaga County Water Authority. They're doing a lot of the same methodologies that we're doing too. But the health department and the EPA regs say that customers can verify their own service, but we have to get a photograph from them sent in by them to help support that determination.
But that is their service, coming in for the house.
Yeah.
That's their responsibility.
Well, it's their responsibility to maintain it. They have no obligation to verify for us
Right.
what it is. If they don't do that, we have to go out and dig it to see it.
There's no machine that tests that could tell you if it's lead or copper or anything yet.
There's a machine
they
out
developed
there.
one?
There is a machine out there that there's a company that does that. They use electrical current. Because I had discussed that with the staff, I don't know, 6 months ago. I said the conductivity of lead is different than copper,
Yes.
obviously.
Yeah.
So can you measure it by current? There is a tool out there and a company that does it. And last fall at the state AWWA conference, the guy who runs that company was there and did a lecture on it. And when I stuck around afterwards to talk to him about it, his cost was exorbitant. It was, I think it was like $600 a location or something.
I'm the only one
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're
guess get a good business, doesn't want to get
I was
into
gonna
it.
say, you gotta
Plus,
get into it.
plus.
Right.
Well, then on top of that, what they do is they go down the basement, they actually pull the meter and they feed something through from the inside the basement. So now you got all this coordination you gotta do with the customers, you gotta have a good working shut-off valve, and then they take the meter out, then they put this thing in there, and it takes a while. They could probably
Only
only,
putting current with water
yeah,
and copper and lead.
yeah,
You may electrify somebody down the street.
you never know. It's a trickle current, I mean, it wouldn't be that
No, I was
much,
gonna say, it's not.
but it wasn't very cost effective.
Okay.
Now, if you're down in New York City where, you know, if you wanted to visually verify it, you're digging up the sidewalk, that's different.
Yeah.
Now you're comparing his cost with something, you know,
I mean,
tremendously
the tools
costly.
they can now see joists, they can see everything else, studs, nails. You tell me they
Right.
can't figure something like that out yet.
Well, they have, but as I said, it's not cheap, and he's in demand right now.
I don't see where we have anything to lose with that, giving this a shot for the $25 credit.
We might only get 50 takers, but every time someone does, if we issue them a $25 credit, even if 3,000 people did it, we're not losing that much revenue compared to the cost of having to go out and verify and inspect 3,000 of these things.
Are we bound to do so many per year? Do we have to do so many or have
So,
to verify so much?
The way we have to have our best guess at a total inventory of lead pipes submitted to the health department by October.
Yeah.
And so we're doing everything we can to have a systematic, a methodology.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way, to show that we think this is reliable.
We made our
information.
best attempts. Is
Yeah.
what
And it has to
show
be a
is that
sound
we-
methodology. The
Yeah.
problem is the health department won't tell us ahead of time what's a sound methodology and what isn't.
Okay.
We run the risk of saying, here's our best guess, and they go, that's not good enough.
That's not good enough.
Go out and do
That's
it
what
all
I'm
over
saying.
again.
Yeah. they-
Yeah. So this is just one more tool that we think might provide some relief. As I said, you know, even if over the next few months, 100 people take us up on it, that's 100 less we have to
But you're
verify.
only checking their side.
They can tell us on their side. Our records, in some cases, indicate what's on our side, but we don't know what's on their side. So, and in some cases, they've changed theirs out already, and we don't know it because they never told us. Or it was in some of those systems that we inherited, you know, from other utilities when we took everything over.
So shouldn't we just test the water at their faucet to see if it's lead contaminated?
That doesn't tell us much either. And the only sampling we really do are ones that we know are lead pipes that we're required to sample at. But
So if they got lead pipes running through the whole house, even if you change their entrance, ain't gonna make a difference.
that's the folly in the whole thing.
Right.
There's houses that have copper, but they still have lead solder.
The bottom line, water pipes are not the problem that they're trying to solve. They've created a problem because of Flint, but they're not the problem that they're trying to solve. The
Phil,
problem-
chime in, by the way, if there's anything I missed here.
You're doing fine.
But once Flint hit, it was like, oh, it's water. Now we can get away from everything else and we have the bad guy.
Yeah.
That's it.
And, you
The
know,
fact is, our treatment is effective, and they keep dropping the bars to what we have to accomplish.
so okay, so the first,
What are you looking for?
well, what I'm looking for is if the board is agreeable to this, then we can send something out to the people that we think are on the suspect list or the unknown list and say, if you can verify for us using this simple method and send us a photo to our website, then you'll get a $25 credit on your next bill. And if that way we can hopefully gather more information without us having to actually go there, which will be a lot more expensive.
It also proves to HUD that they have their service with lead coming in. True.
I'm sorry?
Their service, what they're responsible for, is the service that the lead's coming in, and it's proving that they have a lead service entering their home.
Well, yeah,
Correct?
yeah.
Is that your intent? You want to
Well,
prove that?
no, our intent is to meet the obligation of providing an inventory of where lead services occur in our system right now. We think we're
But
down
that's
to
their service, not your service.
correct, but what we don't know yet is whether or not we're the ones that are going to have to pay to change theirs out all the way to the meter. They haven't told us yet. All they've said is that regardless of your chemical treatment and how well you can bring your lead levels down, you're still going to probably have to change out all these pipes over the next 10 years. But yet we still have to go through all this. We have to be able to
They
identify.
first have to measure.
We have
so
to
they know
measure
what the
where they
cost
are and how many there are, and then they're going to tell us, okay, you got 10 years to replace them all. And they haven't told us where the money's coming from, or whether we're going to shift that off to the homeowner for their side, or whether we got to pay for their side.
So are we only responsible to the shutoff, right?
We
The
are-
homeowner's responsible
right
from
now,
the
but
Correct.
shutoff.
Right now,
it's
but
very-
Right now.
It's very likely we're gonna end up being responsible right to the meter.
And they're also discouraging
From
partial
the
replacements.
Oh,
They're anticipating it.
Yes.
You're anticipating
I am
it.
anticipating.
Well, we're all anticipating that based on everything we've heard so far.
Okay.
Phil?
Just, regardless of whether we have to change it or not, we do have to have a publicly facing interactive map on the website after October that identifies, anybody can go on the website, pick a premise, and it has to tell you what the service is on the utility side and on the homeowner side. So that has to be done for every service, and that has to be updated annually. That's already built into the law.
I mean, and they didn't tell us how we're gonna have to pay for it.
You know,
Yeah.
children with elevated blood
Federal
levels,
Governments,
water is the
sense.
least contributing factor.
no, it makes a lot of sense to them.
It's, yeah, well, as Bruce said, it's a knee-jerk political reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at any rate, if the board wants to authorize a credit to help speed this process up, we'd love it. If not,
There's really no, yeah, there's.
I like the idea of the credit,
Yeah.
but I think you need to combine that with a publicity
oh yeah,
campaign and maybe get our agency to do, a couple of advertisements and a nice flyer that's user-friendly. Just don't send a letter.
no, they've already done the flyer. We're just resurrecting it. Actually, we have something that's nice and slick and professionally done already.
But
We're
with a
just
little bit
updating
of public publicity and maybe
Yeah.
a couple of radio shows and
Yeah.
TV, and let people know
Right.
what's coming, social
Yeah.
media.
So is that a motion in there,
Yes,
Bruce?
that's a motion. To
Is there a second?
Pursue it with promotion.
Thank you, Gene. Any further discussion on this? Yes, we can all agree the government doesn't know what they're doing on this, but we're stuck with it.
Don't take that.
These will be spent 30 minutes.
All those in favor?
All right, thank you.
Anybody opposed?
Hopefully this will be a good
Thank
vote.
you.
It might be a total bust, but it might help us out.
Hey, we don't know, Pat. It could be great.
It's a negative.
If nobody complies, we don't lose any credits.
Yeah,
All right, right.
Thank you. And unless there's any other questions for me, I'll save the rest of my report for executive session.
Anybody? Any old business? Any new business? We need a motion to go into executive session regarding labor relations and potential litigation. Second, thanks, Rich. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you.